Oh boy, how late am I to my own party? Wow, welcome everybody. Welcome to the live show. Chat, come on in here. Come on over. Let's hang out for a little bit. It is crazy. Another week has gone by. Another month has gone by. The end of February is done. We are now into March and the world moves on. The year moves on, and here we go. Yo, bro, have a great show. Hey, let's go. Thank you. Thanks to everybody for joining. Don't forget to hit that like button. It helps out a whole ton. It gives the little algorithmic gods with little lowercase g a little signal that sends that signal out to everybody to say, hey, you know what would be great is if more people that think the way you think maybe would pay attention to this content here as well. Hey, welcome. I've got Anasty in the chat. Thank you for coming and moderating the chat. If you have any issues in the chat, make sure you hit up Anasty and just say, I've got issues. Let me know. You can let her know and she'll sort that right away. So welcome everybody. Yeah, brand new month. Brand new time. I got preoccupied in so much stuff. I ended up late for my own stream. That's the way things go. Trish Prue with a $2 super chat. Good evening, Clyde. Hit that like button, everybody. Yes, please. Thank you so much. Could you talk a little bit about what you meant by Japanese language and inclusive language? Okay. This came up last week in last week's stream. Recently, my wife was telling me about this thing that's happening because she's saying that this, so-called inclusive language thing is happening as well in Japan now. And it's showing itself in new ways of what people are calling harassment in this way or that way. Harassment. And in Japanese people, they short form it. They say hara. And so for example, sexual harassment, they'll short form that and call it sekuhara. That's I know it's hilarious, but it's a thing that they do. And one of the things recently that's been getting under the skin of I guess Zoomers, like the new young generation in Japan, is when people don't put emojis or emoticons in the on a text. And they'll just text people with just the punctuation of just a period, or in Japanese, it's a circle. And now, and the way you pronounce that is maru. Maru is zero, as a circle, right? And people have been calling it a harassment to have not emojis, but a circle, because people don't understand the context in which you're giving this statement. Or are you being sarcastic? What are you doing? I need to know your emotions in this. And because there's no emotions, just a circle, they're calling it maruhara. Circle harassment. It's crazy. It's crazy that this stuff is actually happening in Japanese as well. And it's sad. It really is. It's sad because this woke culture, this woke mind virus is spreading. It's spreading all around. Scott Gallant with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Scott. Buy a new microphone. Yo, sounds like you're talking into a tin can. Does it? Am I having some microphone issues right now? I need to hear myself back just to be sure on this. Tin can. Does it? Am I having some I don't think so. Maybe it's just my voice. Maybe I'm just a tinny guy. Scott Gallant, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. That's hilarious. Yeah, no emoji. No. Yeah, that's it. Sounds good to me. Yeah, zero issues with the sound. Maybe, do you have your phone in a tin can, perhaps? I don't know. You sound just fine. Thank you for explaining. Reason was I was asking because I was thinking of going to Japan for work, except something, scrolled way too quick. To escape C63. Yeah, C63. Scariness. Holy cow. Yeah, a lot of scariness. Yeah, everybody putting circles in the chat now. If you don't like that, if you don't like the harassment, put a circle in the chat. Get your circle in the chat for now for Maruhara. Penny D with a $2 super chat. Hey Clyde. Hey Penny D. Welcome to the live stream. This is the Friday night live stream. This is the what would you call it? The only Friday live stream that brings you the truth and is not afraid to admit when wrong things are said. That's absolutely correct. I turn my sub down when watching live streams. Too much bass. I don't. You know what's funny? I ran because I met a bunch of people when I was in Calgary last time, and there's all the marus in the chat, all the circles. And it was funny because one woman came up to me and said, "Clyde, you sound exactly like you do on YouTube." Why wouldn't I? She said, "Well, most people they crank the bass or whatever radio DJs do and get right up on the microphone." And no, this is just how I sound. It's yeah, it's not a trick. It's just the way it is. Just the way it is. Wally Tuckler. That's a great name. With a 279 super chat. Thank you so much. No chat on it, but thank you so very much for that. That's awesome. And anyone who's met me in real life would attest to that. Yeah, no. I mean, I could really base it out. I don't do that. Cody E, member for 19 months. Wow, this has been 19 months already. 19 months. See you for another 19. Awesome. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Let's get into some of this stuff. I wanted to talk about things. Before we get into this, I want to show a clip that really sparked my interest. Scott with a $13.99 super chat, a super sticker with the with the office chair zooming around. That's what I do in mine. I do that all the time. I zoom back and forth to the piano and do my thing on that. It's lots of fun. It is lots of fun. But I wanted to get into this because I'm also not just a fan of pianos. I was always a fan of Carl Sagan. He was one of my one of the people I looked up to growing up. I had an affinity for Carl Sagan. Because I liked learning about the cosmos and all that. And now I also have an affinity for Heather Haying and her husband, Brett Weinstein. And they have a great podcast, the Dark Horse podcast. I listen to them as much as I possibly can. I can't. The thing is, when you're a content creator and you're making so much content, it limits how much content you can consume. So I spend as much time at work with headphones on. I've actually been listening to Dr. Peterson's not his recent book, but the 12 Rules for Life. I hadn't read that book yet. So I've been doing the audiobook at work, and wow, it's a really, really good book. I had no idea that it was going to be so Christian centric, but it's actually, what would I say? I think in a good way. It is that, and I find that really interesting. But let's get to this clip of Carl Sagan, because this is a timeless clip, and it actually goes into a lot of what we've been suffering through over the past several years. Whether you're talking about the COVID-19 pandemic or climate alarmism or any of this stuff that's been going on recently. Peterson is a YouTuber. Yeah, Peterson is a YouTuber and an author and all that stuff. But Carl Sagan would be a YouTuber today if he was still around. I guarantee that. I really do guarantee that. But get into this clip here. So this is Heather Haying. We've arranged our society based on science and technology in which nobody understands anything about science and technology. This is a combustible mixture of science and power. Sooner or later is going to blow up in our faces. Carl Sagan, 1996. This is the actual clip of him saying that.
But what's the danger of all this? I mean, you know, this is not the thing that...
There's two kinds of dangers. One is what I just talked about, that we've arranged a society based on science and technology, in which nobody understands anything about science and technology. And this combustible mixture of ignorance and power, sooner or later, is going to blow up in our faces. I mean, who is running the science and technology in a democracy if the people don't know anything about it? And the second reason that I'm worried about this is that science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes ambling along. It's a thing that Jefferson lay great stress on. It wasn't enough, he said, to enshrine some rights in a constitution or a Bill of Rights. The people had to be educated, and they had to practice their skepticism and their education. Otherwise, we don't run the government. The government runs us.
Remember what a time when it was not like a political bias thing to quote Jefferson? Like I can't fathom this. It's crazy. We actually live in a time where, you know, that would actually that would be some sort of like aboleth, is that the word for it? Where it kind of shows your political standing. I know, like, I'm largely libertarian. I have a great affinity for Jefferson and the other founders of the United States of America, but it just made me think about that in particular. But other thing to note, Carl Sagan's voice, he just has that command on his voice. It's amazing. And to see who took over, Neil deGrasse Tyson, really not living up to what Sagan's even thoughts were in this regard of this danger of turning science into a dogma such as this. And that's really where we've gone at this time. And it is really reminiscent of a time far gone. And my chat's doing this thing again. Come on. What are you? Come on, behave. All right. A time long gone, a time when the church used to run society, and that was the thing. It was a dogma of religion, and that was how we organized society at the time. Science and math, says Dr. Roscoe Pico, for $5. Thank you for the super chat. Science and math can't even figure out how a bumblebee flies. I gotta throw this one at you because they figured it out, actually, because that's like one of the things, and I you know, growing up, that was like the thing that people would always say, you know, science and math are great, but we haven't got a real grasp on it because we don't know how bumblebees fly. It just doesn't make sense, you know, with all the physics. They figured it out. They actually figured it out. It was a couple of years ago, actually. It wasn't that long ago. They figured out the science behind why bumblebees could fly, and the whole reason why it was such an anomaly is they're so heavy compared to the size of their wings, and it just didn't make sense why they could even hold themselves up. I'm not the one to explain it here, the physics behind it, but they did figure it out, and they do have an active working theory on why bumblebees fly. But thank you so much, Mr. Roscoe Pico, for the super chat.
What's the danger of all this?
That's auto playing back again. But yeah, I just wanted to go over some of these things that I was noticing. I love bee snot, aka honey. Love it too. It's good for you. It'll boost your immune system, and it never goes bad. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? That's one of those things. But let's get into some of these other stories. I'm just reading the headline here. This one made me laugh. This is, of course, a BC lawyer has been ordered to pay costs for opposing counsel for the time it took to discover that 2 cases she cited were as precedents were ChatGPT hallucinations. I'm not even getting into the article. That explains it all. That, well, basically some young lawyer was, just like a lot of young students, cheating on her assignment, and got ChatGPT to give her the answer, and it turns out it was a bunch of BS in the AI, and the AI it wasn't exactly forthcoming with truth. And we've been learning our lesson with that, you know, having stuff that coming at us that's kind of BS, you know, and then just running with it. Perhaps, you know, just telling everybody this is the way it is. You got to be very careful. Even things, if you think it's legit, just on the onset, it might actually be BS. You might actually have to double check your work. Go back, have a look, because you'll get duped. You'll get duped on this kind of thing. Wally Tuckler with another 279 super chat. When things get very small, physics work differently. Now that's an interesting concept. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of string theory or anything like that, but this was largely a fad that came out of that concept a bunch of years ago in the scientific communities. This micro versus macro theory, when things, you get really into the tiny, that a lot of the rules of physics are thrown out the window and they change, and there's a lot of differences. Now that may be true. That may be true. I don't know the ins and outs of that, and I'm not going to decry that I do. But interestingly enough, because a lot of my discipline was in economics, not that I went to a formal school for economics, but I studied it for years and years, reading lots of treatises on economics. Maynard Keynes' treatise on economics, Ludwig von Mises, reading lots of F.A. Hayek, and mainly focused on the Austrian school, but also got into the Chicago School of Economics. But that was an interesting thing that John Maynard Keynes, the contemporary, like what most people believe is the economic theory of the day, well, at least government officials. I'm going to switch screens. It's going to go away, and I'm going to pop it back because I don't know why it does that. But the contemporary theory, and it really got adopted around the time of Richard Nixon. That was when it really got a foothold. Was a theory from John Maynard Keynes. I don't know why I'm going on about this, but it's on a thread that I have going on in my head right now. But it was, think of a bee swimming, not flying, says Wally Tucker for 279. Okay, yeah, think of a bee swimming, not flying. Okay, that fair enough. But yeah, back to this thread. So this is interestingly how we got to the point where we have giant deficits in government. It's all because of this one guy who was, kind of a pseudo intellectual, and he wanted to have his grand treatise, and he made a bunch of them prior to that, and all the economists kind of threw him out the window and said, no, your ideas suck, go back to the drawing board. And back to the drawing board he did, and he did at a time that a lot of these string theory and all of this stuff with macro theory physics was coming out. And he thought, here's a great idea. I'll think of this in macro theory versus micro theory economics. So all my crappy ideas that I think work, I'm just going to apply that to big economics. when you're talking about nation states and governments and stuff like that, my policies my ideas will work, and then everything else will just be on the micro scale, and then it's all the usual economic theory that we're all familiar with, that's kind of self-evident. But what we'll do is, on a macro scale, we'll change the rules, and we're gonna go with that. And that was John Maynard Keynes, and I think it was F.A. Hayek that was writing about this, and he said that he lamenting in the past that they didn't go hard on him on this theory. They thought he was a charlatan, and that it wasn't very good. They normally would go hard on people that came out with ideas like this, but because he'd been rejected so many times, they didn't bother. And unfortunately, this one took. It really took. It grabbed. It grabbed, and it was something that they did. Behold, love you, dude. You seem like a cool dude. Cool dude. Thanks. Love you back. No, you're breathtaking. So where was I? That distracted me. Yeah, they thought he was a charlatan, that it wouldn't go anywhere. But what happened was politicians found his economic theory, and they went, wow, this is a theory that justifies deficit spending. Why don't we go with this one? not because it's true, not because it's legitimate and that it works and that it's fantastic. No. Or it makes sense. No, it's because it justified something that they already wanted to do. So it's like the cart before the horse sort of thing. And what was it? Richard Nixon, he was famous in 1971 for saying, we're all Keynesians now. As in John Maynard Keynes, Keynesian economists. And wow, that led to, inflation like we'd never seen. The slow grow inflation that happened since the 1970s when they went off the gold standard and Canada went off the gold standard. I believe it was around the same time as well. And we've just been slowly inflating our stuff ever since. Late here, you must be telling too much truth. What's that? You do not even show up on my main YouTube page. That is a first. Well, that's unfortunate. That really is. But hey, we've got 1,000 people in here, and half of which don't know where that like button is. Hey, everybody, hit that like button. It's right down below. It does us a huge favor. And it's fantastic. It helps the channel a whole bunch. It'll probably get us back on that man page. Hit that like button. Come on. SWW420 with a $1 super chat. No message, but thank you for the $1 super chat. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Humble Tracker gifting 5 memberships to the channel. Humble Tracker, thank you so much for coming again and gifting memberships. Everybody who's got a membership, get in there and give Humble Tracker a big thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Now I got a package in the mail. I wanted to get into this. I'm gonna go over some of these stories, and then in a little bit we're also gonna have special guests tonight. That is Stevlin Ambrose. When I'm not showing my web, what am I doing? Here we go. Stevlin Ambrose. You may know him from Twitter. He's a journalist. He's been doing some great work talking about the Coutts Four and investigating into that. And we're gonna be talking about what's going on there, how this whole story became a thing, and where that's going. So look forward to that in the second hour of the show. But in the meantime, we're going to get into some of these other things. And I wanted to open up this package because I'll just preface this story. And I gotta pull this up actually, because this is a thing that happened to me. A thing that happened to me. I had a phone. I bought one of those flip phones. You know, those fantastic fancy pants phones. Yeah, one of those. Great opportunity to lose a lot of money is what I did. And lose I did. The phone screen broke not after very long of having it. And unfortunately, they told me I was gonna have insurance on it. The insurance company's like, yeah, but we don't cover those. You told me you would. The phone company didn't want anything to do with it. Samsung didn't want anything to do with it. It was a real runaround of like, whose fault is this? And who's going to pay for it? Like, if it's my fault, I'll pay, whatever. But like, who's going to cover this kind of thing? Humble Tracker with another $10 memberships to the channel. Thank you so much, Humble Tracker. Everybody, get in there. Give a big old thank you for the memberships. Appreciate that. Climate change got me. Yeah, that's it. Climate change got me. Anyway, long story short, I sent it to a friend of mine who's also got a YouTube channel. You may know this channel, perhaps. Let's pop it up. Perhaps you know this channel. Tell me if you do. Tell me if you don't. My chat is doing some wild things tonight. Get in the chat. Tell me if you know AVE YouTube channel. It's he's a great guy. Been chatting with him for a number of years. He's fantastic. Does good work. He's a fellow Kanakistani here, living in the greatest place to get locked down in on Earth. Many takers. Many people know. Anyway, I sent him the phone, and then he did a video about it. Looking at the flippity doodah. That was a thing. But I want to show you guys actually something that was, and I got to pull this up because it was actually the inspiration for why I even got going with any of this stuff. You guys wouldn't even know who I am if it wasn't for this guy and one particular video that he did. And I'm gonna pop this up because I wonder if I can find it. There it is. I'm gonna play this because you guys are gonna absolutely love this. Clyde, will you be following Marty's lead and shave off your beard? I'm betting you have a baby face. I do have a baby face, and that's the reason why I'm gonna stick with the beard. I'm gonna keep this on here. Nobody takes me seriously. I'm just a little kid. A little kid without it. No thanks. I'm gonna keep it, and it's getting cold. It's getting cold these days, so I'm gonna keep that. But I want to show this video because this video was something that absolutely was the catalyst for me talking about what was happening with the Freedom Convoy. If it wasn't for this video, none of you would even know who I am. Here it goes.
Thank you to my fellow citizens joined in the delegation to the nation's capital, Ottawa, to bring the good news to the self-appointed moral authority and Queen of Karen's, Aunt Trudy, that we are ready for Canada to reopen. This is a beautiful thing. Rather than sow rancor and division, we bring the message that in a strong liberal democracy such as Canada, we can have differing opinions. You put three people in a room, they can't agree on lunch. And now we're trying to jackboot our way into everyone deciding what to do with their own bodies. I support a woman's right to choose, and I support your right to keep your medical information to yourself. It's none of your fucking business. This is a beautiful thing because it reminds us that in a strong liberal democracy, we can have differing opinions and be just fine. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees us freedom of conscience and religion, freedom of thought, freedom of belief, freedom of opinion. And it's good to remind the powers that be that rather than just looking out for themselves, toadying to some unseen hand, that they are actually beholden to the people of Canada. Aunt Trudy, Bonnie Hitler, they've had their moment in the sun, in Costa Rica apparently. They don't pass the kindergarten ethics test. The spoiled, rich, frat boy emperor routine is over. If you tell lies, you get put in the liar column. If you invoke science as a deity without backing it up with data, it's actually not science, it's opinion. You know, the word hero gets tossed around a lot nowadays, but I'm reminded of the story of Viola Desmond in 1946. In New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, a black woman dared sit in the white section of a theater in a podunk town. 9,000 new Glaswegians will take me to task on that. Viola Desmond, a grown-ass woman, for the impertinence of not moving to the colored section of the theater, was imprisoned, and so the powers that be trumped up a tax evasion charge because the price of the white ticket was 1 penny more than the balcony ticket. Fast forward today, and Viola's stately visage is emblazoned on the obverse of the Canadian purple $10 bill, lauded as a hero of the Canadian civil rights movement. And so I offer to you, our Canadian working class heroes, a portent of things to come, the obverse of the bear behind Queen Toonie. We, your fellow Canadians, wish you Godspeed and the wind up your crack on your way to Ottawa. In the words of Red Green, keep your dick in a vice.
And that was the video. That was the video that I got choked up, actually. I'm not kidding. Like, I'm not being facetious in that. I got choked up, actually. That was at the end of January in 2022. And when I saw that video, it was a calling. It was, I was looking at my computer. I was looking at all the stuff that I have for making video equipment. And I said, I'm not shutting up on this one. I'm not. I just can't. I can't. I care too much about this. These are my people, you know, tradespeople, truckers. My brother's a truck driver. This was all so important to me. So I was like, okay, I can't go to Ottawa, but I've got all of this. I can talk about what's happening, and that's what I did, and I just didn't stop. It was every morning before I went to work, I would wake up at 4 a.m. and I would just rack every story, every bit of information that I can get out, compile stories, and put it out for everybody to see. And that's what happened there. Now, I had already been in contact with AVE because I used to do a DIY channel and he liked it and all that stuff. And it's funny. But then I sent him the proposition of, hey, I broke my phone and nobody wants to take responsibility for it. So I sent it over his way. And then he he did a recent video on it, and it's a lot of fun. It's funny, and he gets into a lot of stuff. I just love his commentary and just how he breaks things down.
At the very least, a cluck and a rueful head nod. We have here the fanciest, most reflective phone in the history of phones. You never would have believed it. I seen one of these at the Telus store. I thought, who in the bloody would ever buy something so Jesus stupid as folding glass?
This guy, stupid.
My buddy Clyde.
Yeah,
that's who. Clyde. He used to run a channel called Pap Smear Red Ribbon Boys, and they go in the shop. Like him and his buddy Tomio, Japanese fella. It was tight and funny, but it just didn't take off. That's the problem, of course, with playing to the gallery, in the words of Ziggy Stardust. You never want to play to the gallery. You just make what you appreciate and the best art that you can make, and you put it up on the internet. It was just on the cusp of taking off. I swear. Just a couple more thrusts. But Tomio got tired of the YouTube grind, and Clyde pivoted and changed to Clyde Do Something. Now he's essentially political commentary here in Kanakistan. I myself, there's not much to comment on. Left wing, right wing, it's all feathers on the same bird. Not that my opinion matters one iota. Don't play to the gallery. $1,800 in the difference, I think he paid. Kanakistan Kopecks, mind. Now, if I were of the Telus variety and flipping and flopping, moving around like a cockroach under light, trying to not warranty this, I would say right off the hop, well, of course it's broken, because you put a film over top of it. Now, Glar's been around since Christ was a cowboy. Or dare I say, since Christ rose in the East. And
okay, so I'm going to leave a link in the description or in the comments here. You guys can all go watch that whole video if you'd like. It's a fantastic video. He breaks it down what happened with it. But I got a package here from him. I'm gonna be careful because it is a live stream. I'm gonna make sure no information gets shared of that sort of variety. But let's get into this. Where's hey, I've got a vertical split. You can see, hey, I'm doing the AVE thing now. Check this out. Keyboard out of the way. And I've got a knife of sorts. It's a crummy one. And a package that came in, it's got properly blacked out there. Let's see, because this is a much heavier package than what I sent him. So I'm assuming that there's other stuff in this, and it might be of the comical variety if I know the man well enough. And well, why don't we just get into that? All right, let's get into it. I'm gonna do a little pre-check to make sure there's no like credit card information or something like that right on the top. Not that I can see. Nope, not that I can see. Here we go. Enter the, and you guys always see my mug. Oh, I don't have it in here with me. The one that says F off on the front. On the other side of the mug, it actually has this logo, which is hilarious. It's the good old Cockford machine company. That's a thing. Here, focus. There we go. It's a lathe. Nice. These are stickers. Wow. He's got some Skookum stickers over there at AVE channel. These are cool. Keep a safe distance. COVID. Anyone could be carrying COVID-19. Look out. Look out. Watch out. You never know. You never know. What else have we got in here? Holy cow, you sent a whole pack of these. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. Okay, we got a lot of those. Maybe telling people to watch out for the COVIDs. What else have we got? We've got Fight the pandemic. Make a mask today. Is he messing with me? What is this? What is this? Oh, telling people to make a mask. There's a fine print on it. For more people we can get in washable face masks, the sooner we'll beat COVID-19. Oh, is he telling me? Is he telling me something here? My man. My man. And this is Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Anybody? I'm going to have to translate this one. Yeah, no. Nein, sprechen Sie Deutsch. I'm going to have to look for a translation on that one. Well, let's look at some of these others. Good stuff. We've got some fridge magnets. Oh, a tap chart? No way. That's going on the toolbox. Absolutely. Now, a lot of people ask what this wrench is. This is a particular wrench. I have one myself, actually. It's a very Kanekistani thing. What do we have here as well? My tools bite. I'm not gonna say that one out loud. You can read it on the screen. keep him out of my drawers. Love that. Another tap chart. Not to be operated by. You got it. You got it. Not only will this kill you, it'll hurt the whole time you're dying. Danger! Watch out! Watch out! Oh, okay. And there. This is the mug you guys get to see all the time. We do work nice because we do it twice. Love it. Emergency shelter for hazardous working conditions. Hey, I gotta make sure this is all on the cam when I'm doing this. Take heed. Apparatus predates safety. There you go. Wow, what a care package, man. Nice stuff. And of course, my my phone's in here, and a note Okay, so this is the dead phone for rectal use only. Okay. And oh, some change from the old delivery. Oh, he sent me all of it back. No kidding. I'm just gonna make sure there's no details on this that I shouldn't share. I sent him money to send this back because I didn't know what the shipping would cost. Ola Clyde, interesting teardown. Check out the real reason they didn't open their what is this? Wow, that is some handwriting. Foundation books linked to VBC's Peter calls. Wow, I'm gonna have to get someone without dyslexia to read this for me at some point. Delivery for RMNA. YBC so holy cow. Why BC so loco? Bonnie Hitler tried to grill Bates infecting kids in India with. Okay, these are things that I cannot say on YouTube. Okay, I'm gonna look into that. That's some interesting stuff. But that was a bit of a interesting collaborative project that I did with AVE there. What do we got here? We've got like a couple of axe heads, micro axe heads, and hammerheads. These are interesting. Oh, that's really cool. Some of the offcuts. Oh, that's rad. Actually, I'm really excited about that, to be honest. But that, and is that he made an any key? Shut up. Shut up. What is this? Notice, hurry, obstacle in mirroring area. In mirror are gaining. That's hilarious. It's backwards. I'm gonna put that somewhere. He made an any key. That is freaking awesome. I need to figure out how to get the die for that. For the back of that, it's a keycap, like for a keyboard, like one of these keyboards. Actually, and it would fit, but the back doesn't have the focus. There we go. The back doesn't have the little X in it, which is unfortunate because I would mount it right on the keyboard immediately. But is that brass or copper? A copper any key. So next time you're looking for the any key, there it is. There it is. And it's even in cherry format. Wow. If you guys didn't know, I'm a keyboard dork. I obsess over keyboards. I have too many keyboards. This is a thing that I do in my spare time. I make keyboards. These are fun. It's a fun hobby, and it's a thing that I do. But that's that. Let's get back into some of these news stories and talk about some of the stuff that was going on this week. That was a fun package. I really enjoy it when people send packages. I get them periodically here and there. I don't always showcase them on the channel because a lot of times they're personal. So I do that. Nice clickies. Yeah, right. Love the keyboards. It's a big thing for me. But let's move on. I might put together a video about that whole experience with the phone and all of that stuff. But for the sake of time now, let's get into some of these stories that I wanted to talk about. I couldn't believe this clip that came out this week of Justin Trudeau. It's just unbelievable. So this is real. This is not a deep fake. I want to show everybody this.
Because we know that Russia must win this war. That Ukraine must win this war against Russia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. This, of course, was when he was off doing his giving away all our money again. Yeah, giving away more of our money, hitting up all the world leaders and showing off how altruistic he is with other people's cash. Very nice guy, correct? And that was the thing that he did this past week. Now, Tamara got in touch with me and she wanted me to share. She sent me this video, which really, I want to say startles me, but does it? I mean, with all that's been going on in Canada, it's crazy. And you know, I went out in last September. I went to the protest for parents' rights. I have 2 kids of my own. A lot of parents are very concerned about what's going on in schools in Canada. And this is a story and you don't usually get to see stories like this, excuse me, of Quebecers doing their very best to speak English, to pass the message on. This is heartwarming that, you know, somebody from Quebec, because, you know, there's a lot of animosity, to put this video together, to explain this, to send the warning out of what's going on with his kid's school. And I mean, I'll just play this because it's really important. People need to hear this.
Hi everybody, my name is Diego Machado. I want to share with you a situation that we have here in Gatineau, Quebec. I apologize from my English. I'm trying to do my best, but you need to understand that I'm a French-speaking person, and I'll try to do my best to share the message with you. This is a message for all parents around Canada. I am the parent of 2 beautiful boys that need to be in a daycare of the government of Quebec. Yesterday we had a discussion about a book that its name is Boucle d'Or en français, in French, and it's the history of a family of bears that the little one, a kid, a male bear, wants to be dressed like a girl, and the father said, no, you need to understand you're a guy, you don't have to do that. And then finally, in the history, a bad wolf in a costume of Little Red Riding Hood told to the kid, you can do it, you can do it. And it passed away the authority of the parent, of the father bear, to do that. You can do it. So for us, it was the interpretation to share with the authorities, with the personnel of the daycare yesterday. And we had a good discussion with two people, especially the pedagogic coordinator and the director of the installation. But at the end of the day, my wife have to assist to a meeting with the director of this institution, that is a public institution in Gatineau, Quebec, this daycare, to talk about this book. So immediately the attitude of this lady was terrible. It was given names to my wife like, you are a Trump supporter, you are ignorant, this book is support in science, and you have stereotypes, your cultural, it's your point of view. This book was read by 500 fathers, as you are the only one that had some complaints about it. It's a ministerial politic, and you need to understand that the book was of decision of Ministry of Family in Quebec. So the discussion was escalated, and after giving names, this director told to my wife to go to take your kids and go out to my office, go take your antidepressants, and if you don't do that, I call the police, I call security. Effectively, she called the police. Two agents of Gatineau police service went to the daycare to talk with us, first with this lady and their team, and then with us to explain the situation, etc. So I need to share this message with all parents, but because you need to be aware. This lady, the director of the institution, told to my wife to be prepared to war. If she had problems with this right now, she told her, you need to be prepared because in school is worst, and you know that. She told her, you need to be prepared for war. So I understand the scope of these words, and I encourage all people, especially parents, that have suffered this kind of situation, to be ready to war and to be prepared to defend your kids.
So I don't mean to cut him off on this, and I'll leave a link in the description after so everybody can go and view this. If you go over on my Twitter, I tweeted it out saying Canada has become so corrupted that even those ones entrusted to watch over our children have been corrupted. Now, what he's saying in this whole video, to summarize, and his English was just, it's fine. He's got a thick accent, and that's fine. But so it was a book that was questionable, and it was teaching morals that are, well, I mean, there's a moral hazard there with, telling essentially the moral of the story was that you can go away from your parents and you can follow other people's leads, and you don't need to listen to what your parents have to say. You can go off and do other things, which is, it's grooming. It's grooming. This is what it is. And he objected to this. He brought it up with the school. I don't know if it's the school board or people that were at the school. And so the one lady had a freak out, called him a Trump supporter and all these other things. What is this? Like, what, is he going to vote as a Quebec citizen for Trump? Like, it's just ridiculous stuff that you hear from people as an objection to your genuine concerns. But that being said, the other people at the daycare told him, you better be ready to go to war with these people, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be war. Just Comply for $5 says, you're the tits, Clyde. Cheers. Am I the tits? Thanks. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. But yeah, it's a case of people having to prepare to go to war. Now, This being said, and this is something that Viva Frei was covering quite a bit before the Freedom Convoy actually happened, was I think it was Legault in Quebec. They put legislation through to basically usurp the supremacy of the parent, basically putting the Quebec government at a higher threshold for basically the betterment or the good of the child, and putting themselves in charge of that over top of parents. And this is concerning. It's very troubling because we're seeing this elsewhere in other places, in other provinces. I had an article here. Yeah, BC, here in British Columbia, the BC Prosecution Services updates hate crime definitions. And the hate crime definitions, of course, and this is it. It's that whole slippery slope argument. I don't know why it's a fallacy. I'd love to talk to some sort of a professor of logic or something like that to talk about why the slippery slope is not an actual thing, or why they consider it a fallacy, because it seems to be the trend that it's a little bit until what is the old expression, the nose of the camel is under the tent, and then next thing you know, the camel is in the tent and there's no getting it out of the tent. And that's the way it's been going. BC Prosecution Services updates hate crime definitions. Definitions now include conversion therapy. Now, conversion therapy sounds bad, doesn't it? Sounds bad. You're trying to, there was the whole pray the gay away sentiment that they had years ago. Louis A. King with a $5 super chat says, this director sounds like she fell out of the stupid tree and hit every branch on the way down. I wouldn't want my kids in that establishment. No, I wouldn't want my kids in that establishment. And we all fear our children being in an establishment with someone like that. This predation that's occurring. And the best thing you can do is teach your kids about this stuff before they go into school. Unfortunately, it's kind of like you don't put them into a soccer field or whatever, a field to go play where there's snakes, and don't tell them what snakes are. You got to tell them what snakes are in case they get bit or come across one. If they didn't know what it was, they might find themselves in danger. But this is what's happening here in British Columbia. They're actually changing the definition to include conversion therapy. Now, how do they define conversion therapy? Because you're going to hear this a lot, that if any teacher has determined that your kid wants to have a different name or be a different gender or any of this stuff, they determine that, and then they convince your kid that. And if you want to tell your kid, like, no, maybe you want to take some time to make your mind up about this stuff, or maybe just be a kid instead of somebody's sexual tool or fantasy, whatever the motives are behind this stuff, perhaps you might not, maybe you're just a kid and this isn't what your motivations are. That's considered conversion therapy now. They're actually calling that conversion therapy because they've already established that your kid is this other thing. So anything else would be conversion. This is scary. This is really scary. It's terrifying because at any moment your child could be under attack by this, and thus yourself. And with the new hate crime legislation, this new online hate bill, they're finding ways to include jail time for any of these offenses, which is absolutely terrifying. This is another example of what's going on in the school. Olia posting this on Twitter.
Completely disregards 3 days a week she taught LGBTQ curriculum in her class. How many of those students are excelling in that classroom? Is everybody in that class getting A's in math, English, grammar, social studies? That we can dedicate 3 days a week to teach 8-year-olds about sexual orientation? I don't care what kind of sex is being discussed. The word sexuality, nudity, does not belong in the ears in a classroom of 8-year-old kids. And when a parent showed their concern, what does this teacher do? completely disregards and goes behind the parents' back trying to find ways of how to continue these lesson plans. If you guys want to talk about including all, listening to all, every student matters, our kids matter too. And we don't want those subjects being taught to children who are just 8 years old. 3 days a
It's terrifying. It really is. It really is terrifying. It's crazy. Super chat from RWS Graha for $5. The best thing you can do is homeschooling, community schooling, or private school. Now, these aren't options for every single person out there. And the idea is like, you know, you want your kids to be able to socialize, or you want to socialize your kids. And I get it. I get the apprehension to that as well. But yeah, you want to be able to let your kids socialize. And in part of the socialization is going through some sort of forms of bullying, going through conflict so that they can learn conflict resolution. And I know, like, you know, you can't shelter your kids all the time. You do have to expose them to these things in a safe way. Now, I'm not talking about these things. I'm talking about exposing your kids to other kids that might be nasty. They need to experience that, and that's one thing. But this sort of predation needs to be out of the schools. Absolutely. Robert McFallon with the $10 super. Hold on, I'm jumping the gun here. Light Giver, the $20 super chat. In case anyone has forgotten, the Hitler Youth and the League of German Girls were developed as Nazi Party youth groups to indoctrinate or introduce children to juveniles to Nazi ideology and policy. Same control, different plan, same control. That is crazy. And you're right. And similar things happened in China in the Cultural Revolution. They wanted to indoctrinate the children, and it's crazy how it really went. It was first they indoctrinated the children, and then the children became so devout in it that they actually ended up persecuting their teachers for not being devout enough to the ideology. That's crazy. And we're talking about like struggle sessions and taking their teachers out back and yeah, doing things that I can't even say on YouTube. Robert McFallon for $10. My dad was way ahead of the curve. He taught me that the faculty of education was the easiest course of study, and a lot of idiots become teachers. I never feared challenging stupid teachers. That's amazing. Actually, that's a great angle. And thank you for that, Robert McFallon, and I appreciate that. Holy cow. That's a great way to look at it. And to but don't tell your kids to be that snotty, right? Humble Tracker gifting 10 memberships to the channel. Thank you so much. That's incredible. Thank you so much. And everybody in the chat, make sure if you got a membership that you get out there and you thank Humble Tracker for giving that to you. That was a gift. Thank you so very much. Amazing. Ice Windale 33 with a 279 super chat. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. If you want to say something in the chat, hit it up. Hit it up. Sometimes when people leave their first super chat, they don't know where the text field is. So thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. Where was I? Okay, yeah, going over this stuff. It's crazy. This is what's happening in the schools, but this is where our government's going, and this is where this online harms bill comes in. Online harms bill proposed changes risk. Sorry, online harms bill proposed changes. Wow. The grammar of this one was really tricky to get around. The online bill's proposed changes risk silencing free speech, experts warn. Well, duh. Do you think you really need an expert to say this? The changing law to allow people to file complaints to the Canadian Human Rights Commission over what they perceive as hate speech online, including, for example, off-color jokes by comedians, could inundate the system and have a chilling effect on free speech, experts warn. Now, this is crazy. It's absolutely crazy to me because we already have these tribunals. We should never even have these tribunals. This should be gone. We should get rid of them completely. It's extrajudicial. They're not judges. They're political appointees. And it's arbitrary. And it's like secret courts. When I learned about what these things were, like most people, when they learn what these things are, these tribunals, they they're actually absolutely dumbfounded that this is something that we have in our society. Steve's Hyde with with a $5 super chat. When I was 8 years old and had no idea what gay even was or where babies came from, it's definitely about division and control, not compassion. No, it is. You're right. And it's about indoctrinating children into these ideologies. It's really crazy. I want to talk about this. I could talk about this all night long, but I do have a guest, and I'm going to bring my guest in. I want to introduce everybody to Stevlin Ambrose. He's a journalist, and he's been writing. He's been talking and getting on the story of the Coutts Four. There's been not a lot of coverage on the Coutts Four, talking about what happened, what the scenario is, and what's going on with the court cases in this whole thing. And I wanted to shed more light on this and get different angles of the story, because, you know, some people are covering it and other people are covering it here and there, and it's kind of all over the place with this story. And just before we get in there, Gakko Donnie, member for 4 months. Healthy grown adults do not get upset when they can't talk about sex with children. You're right. Predators and perverts do that. Full stop. Yeah, there's no reason why an adult would ever want to discuss sexuality in secret with a child, away from parents, and say, this is just between you and I. You don't have to tell your parents about this. I can't see a good scenario where that works. But before we press on with this too much longer, I wanted to introduce my guest tonight. I'm excited about this. I've been excited about this all week, looking forward to this. Tonight's guest is Stevland Ambrose. I always get that. That is such an unusual name, my man. How are you?
I'm good, Clyde. How are you doing?
How did you get a name like Stevland? Where does that come from?
Well, you know, it's kind of a long story. I'll try and give you the short version. It's actually Stevie Wonder's real name.
Oh, shut up. I didn't know that.
Yep. My birth name is Steven, and I hated being called Steve. I was living in Vancouver when I realized that his name was Stevland. His real name is Stevland. And I thought, man, I'd love to change my name to Stevland. But then I thought, that's way too flaky. And then I moved to Nelson.
And people are just flaky there.
Yeah. Everybody back then, everybody was named like Raven or Moonbeam or Waterfall. So I said, okay, fine, I'm Stevland. And people said, wow, what a great name.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So I legally changed my name.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, that's fair. That's fair. Anyway, I brought you on because you've been covering the Coutts Four and that situation there. How did you get onto that trail? Because most people, including myself, have been. There's so much to talk about in Canada. There's so much going on. You're a BC resident, as I am, and somehow you found yourself going down this rabbit hole of what happened to these 4 guys in Coutts, Alberta, during the Freedom Convoy.
Yeah. So, well, right off the top, I'd like to clarify, I'm not a journalist. It's very flattering that you've called me that journalist, and I've been called that several times recently, which is kind of amazing. Our mutual friend Alex reminded me that it's a very low bar these days, so I suppose I could call myself a journalist.
Well, anybody gonna be? I think it's award-winning journalist is like the new one. That's like that's where to go.
Right. I haven't won any awards yet, but
well, no, you don't have to win any like special awards for journalism. Is like you could have got like an ice skating championship in grade 2, and
I haven't won any awards in my entire life. So
okay, we'll have to work on that. Maybe get you in a pie eating contest or something.
Well, so to get back to your question, okay. You know, like many people, I was really intrigued by the Freedom Convoy. And what kind of struck me right off the bat was a lot of my friends and family were saying, you know, people were posting things on social media saying, these guys are white supremacists, or these guys are racist. And I was just blown away by how much vitriol was thrown at them right out of the gate. And so I just found myself defending them more and more. And then, of course, the Ottawa protests went on for 3 weeks, and there weren't any incidences at all.
But like they were talking about the entirety of all of these people. We're talking tens of thousands of people that were involved in the Freedom Convoy, and they're all racists. Like they're all misogynists, and even though they're multi faceted, like there was people from every walk of life that at that protest, but somehow people bought this narrative that they're all somehow racists.
It was amazing. I mean, there was one guy with a full face balaclava with a Confederate flag, and he was chased. There's a video of him being chased out of the crowd, and then there were there was like a small pack of guys who were all wearing those Hawaiian luas, and it's such a false flag. Like literally, it's a false flag. These guys, one of them unfurled a swastika flag for literally, like, it couldn't have been more than a minute or two. And it just so happened that there were like 3 professional photographers just positioned right in the right spot to take photos of this flag right outside the, I think it was a Chateau Frontenac, is that what it's called? The hotel where all the police were staying. Mm-hmm. And so they just used those 2 flags to besmirch everybody who participated in that protest. It was amazing. The most amazing thing for me was just how easy it is to pull this kind of thing off in Canada. But then, so flash ahead to when the 24 hours before the Emergencies Act was invoked, 13 people were arrested in Coutts, Alberta, at the border blockade, one of several blockades that sprung up throughout Canada in support of the Freedom Convoy. And 4 of the men were accused of plotting to kill RCMP. And it was said that they had a cache of guns. And initially, the word was from the organizers of that protest. Initially, they said, "We don't know who these guys are. We don't condone this type of behavior. We can't believe this happened, and we're going to voluntarily shut down the entire protest." And so when I saw that, like it was kind of gutting. It was like, wow, is this actually happening? Like the thing that they've said this would lead to, maybe it's actually happening now. So that was my first.
I recall that because it caught me off guard. And I remember hearing and reading articles that were even talking about a manifesto that later never existed, and this is what it really is the danger of like actual fake news, because there is actual fake news out there. They're quick to go on a rumor and say that they've heard this thing, and then the police will even go and say, well, I heard about it from this publication, and then it becomes truth because now the police are reporting on the thing being reported on. So
exactly,
the manifesto turned out to be one of those things. It didn't exist. It never happened. And then we hear the story, and I get it. I get the concept for all those people that were there. They were as soon as the narrative got put on them that they were, anti-government, trying to form a conspiracy to commit awful acts. They're like, yeah, no, I'm not anything to do with that. I'm out of here. I'm not. It was a great ploy to get them to diffuse the situation, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, and so a lot of people, even in their communities, I mean, a lot of people took a step back from these men, and even today, I would say there's still people who are still just coming around, even with all the exposure, all of the recent exposure, like Tucker. A lot of people are still inclined to believe these guys are automatically guilty because of the accusations. But for me, I think the biggest thing, well, I remember initially seeing, footage of their initial court appearances, and there were huge throngs of supporters outside the court. And that kind of threw me off because I thought these guys were like terrible, unknown, kind of a pack of like people that snuck into the sort of protest, and it turned out that they had lots of support. And then
Was it all support from?
as time went on,
Was it the people who were at the protest that were their supporters, or was it like a completely different crowd?
I'm not sure. It's hard for me to gauge like what the percentage would have been, like how many of the people who were outside the court at that time had been at the protest. If I had to guess, I would say a lot of the people that I'm referring to early on were more from like the Christian groups, like the pastor. I should know his name is Artur
Pawlowski.
I have a feeling that a lot of them might have been associated with that or the Dutch church, I think.
Okay.
I should really know the details about it. But as time went on and there were more hearings, you probably familiar with the actual journalist named Mocha Barajan.
I do know who Mocha is. Yeah, I follow him on Twitter.
Yeah. So he's been going to all these hearings, and he's been interviewing people outside of the court. And that's what really drew me in, was seeing some really, I mean, there's lots of very colorful people that show up at these hearings, but there's also a lot of very intelligent, well-spoken people who are definitely not just there to support people without any sort of rationale behind it. Like, there are people who believe these men are innocent. They're good people. They're open-hearted, fine citizens. And so seeing people like that supporting these men and articulating statements on their behalf really piqued my interest. And I just found myself getting more and more involved in sort of meeting people online who were associated. And ultimately it led to going to Lethbridge for the last week of hearings.
So for people who don't know this story, or like what are you even getting into? These four guys were charged with these heinous crimes of plotting, conspiring to murder police officers or RCMP officers. This is the original charge, and then they're thrown away in jail, lock them up, throw away the key kind of thing. There's I don't know if there's a trial date set, but they've been basically waiting for their trial without bail, not granted bail, based on some trumped up stuff that they're part of this organized terrorist organization. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, that's a really important point. Of course, it's highly unusual in Canada for people to not get bail. Even people who are charged with actually killing cops get bail in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
All of these men would qualify for bail under the normal prerequisites. They're not flight risks. They have people that will vouch for them. But in the case of these four men, two different judges decided that these men, if their crimes, the crimes that they're accused of are so severe that if they were allowed to be released on bail, it would bring disrepute upon the court system. Which, of course, I would make the opposite argument. I would say I should clarify that two actually have been recently released, so it makes it a little bit difficult to
right, and we'll get to that.
Talk about
we'll
this
get to that.
It was 4 men.
Yeah, it's now 2.
So four men have been in remand for almost 2 years. 2 of them just recently got released. I would make the argument that holding all 4 of them, now 2, for this long without bail, that in and of itself is what is bringing disrepute upon the justice system, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what's this whole concept of a speedy trial? You have this right to and to face your accusers. These kinds of things. Now, I understand that there's a publication ban on any journalists that are allowed into the courtroom to cover this.
Technically, it applies to anyone. It applies to the public too.
Okay, it applies to the public. If you go
so
into,
you do have to be careful. Yeah, like I'm not an actual journalist, but I can't discuss the things I've heard in court with you because we're on a podcast. I could probably talk to you in person about it, but
Right, right. So there's certain things that you're not even at liberty to talk about because you were there.
yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, so I mean, I
That
feel
sucks.
comfortable talking about the broader strokes, but you can't actually talk about, the things you heard in court. And
Right.
that's a new in this case, the defense actually asked for the publication ban.
That's what I was so shocked
They're
about, was
concerned.
that it was the defense that asked for it, not the crown prosecutor.
Yeah, well, you have to understand that it's these accusations, right? The CBC, for instance, have published really horrific things about these men that aren't even true. So at some point, their defense team said, geez, we're never going to have an impartial jury. It's going to be impossible, given that there's still months and months in this case. It turns out years to go. So that's why the defense itself asked for the publication ban. But as it happens, there's been a recent ruling from the Supreme Court or from the Superior Court that says any pretrial hearing in Canada now will be subject to a publication ban. So it's going to be standard from now on. Any pretrial hearing. So not the actual trial itself.
Right. That sounds concerning, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have an opinion myself. I mean, I could see how it would sound concerning, but I do think there's a pretty valid argument as well in favor of that, and it's the same argument that the defense team made. It's just comes down to allowing all of this stuff to stay out of the court of the public opinion until the actual trial starts.
Well, it seems like that's where it goes immediately anyway. It goes right to Twitter, where everybody's got an opinion on these guys. And I mean, I call it the hyperbolic chamber because that's exactly what Twitter is. Like, you go there and people don't have a neutral stance usually. It's very one way or the other, and it's very polarized. People either think these guys should be locked up forever, or they think they should be freed immediately and that they're saints, right? There's not a lot of in between, and I'm sure the truth is somewhere in the middle there on the whole thing. Obviously these guys were involved in protest of some sort. There were guns collected. I don't know what the circumstances are of that. Is that something you're at liberty to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a lot to say on that subject. I'm not a gun expert, and there's not a lot of information available, actually. I think most Canadians have seen the initial photo that was released right away of a table covered in guns and a bunch of items on the floor. And I've shown that photo to friends of mine. I have a couple of friends who know a lot more about guns than I do. And the consensus generally is that you can't really tell. It's hard to tell from a photo like that, like what you're actually looking at. I guess part of the problem is, this is all way over my head. I don't know anything about guns, but guys will buy just simple rifles and they'll zoop them up, to make them look like, heavy duty automatic weapons.
Yeah, they call it tactical, right? And it's supposed to look cool, but so, it's not about it being functional like a military weapon. Because that's the charge here, is that they have military weapons. It turns out everything that was in this photograph were all legally acquired firearms. There's no I
believe, if I remember correctly, there's one gun that may not have been properly registered. I'm not sure, but the vast majority of them are just, they're actually like a nothing burger, from what I understand. And what a lot of people say, you and I are both in BC. It's a bit of a different culture than Alberta. people in Alberta, like, they look at that photo, they're like, so what? I mean, keep in mind, it was those guns have become associated with the four men, the Coutts Four, but those guns are belong to potentially 13 people. So,
Right.
and we don't know, nobody's released the information to specify which guns belong to which person. So it's really anyone's guess, but most Albertans, I think, or at least a lot of rural Albertans, would look at that photo and say, so what? Like, there's individuals who are perfectly law-abiding people who have that many guns or more to themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I mean, you're within your right to own them. And I mean, the idea is that, I mean, well, the idea shouldn't be that you have to prove your motive for wanting to own firearms. I mean, it's like anything. Do you have to prove why you buy a car? Do you have nefarious purposes for owning this car? No, you buy it because it's a machine and it does a thing. But so this,
I think it's important to just I like to, be fair to the prosecution as well. And I think the argument that there's a valid argument to be made that people shouldn't bring guns to a protest. Now, they weren't at the actual protest. That's where it gets confusing, because the protest itself was basically in the town of Coutts, and people were staying in the town of Coutts. So I think a lot of those guns were probably seized in people's trailers where they were staying. And I would still, say that perhaps they shouldn't have brought the guns with them in their trailers to Coutts when they're going to a protest. But to then make the leap that they were intending harm, I think is erroneous.
Right. And that's I think the whole purpose of this photograph is to set that stage.
To scare Canadians.
To scare people.
I think, Canada as a country, we actually, I didn't realize this. We're actually 7th in the world in terms of per capita gun ownership, which kind of blew my mind.
Wow.
But the difference is between us and, say, the US is we don't actually kill each other with guns. But we have a lot of guns in Canada. But I think most rural Canadians, and definitely myself, like it is a little shocking to see a photo like that. You just think like, wow, it looks like a militia.
Right. And that's sort of the idea that I mean, if I was to run a propaganda outlet, I think that would be, right on the top of it is, hey, let's get some visuals together that paint these guys in really,
if
really
you look
bad
at that
way.
photo again, sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, on the bottom there, you have a machete. Like, why is that there? That's not
illegal about owning a machete. It's a garden tool.
You have little walkie-talkies down here by that green vest.
Yeah,
just a bunch of random things. It was like they grabbed everything that could potentially look like, I don't know.
Well, in the vests
scary,
too, right? The vests too. They have that feel that like, oh, are you going to war by wearing a vest kind of thing?
Yeah. And again, I talked to some friends who know more than I do about this kind of stuff. And they said, you actually can't tell anything by looking at the vest. It depends on what the vest is actually filled with. Right. So it could just be, my buddy said, that could just be something you wear to go fishing, right? With your tackle. So,
yeah.
Or it could actually be body armor. You can't tell from the photo.
Well, I mean, what was it, like Toronto police? They had, or I think it was Calgary police. They had a photograph recently where they were was it the police, or it was like their transit security, I think it was, and they were all decked out in this gear, and they had the plate carrier and all that stuff on, and people were commenting on that, like why are you so like militant looking for the for just transit police? This is crazy. It's it really is something else, and it's imagery that the whole point is, right? To make it look a certain way, to invoke a certain emotion, and that's what we've always called propaganda. Edward Bernays is famous for saying, "Oh, we'll call it PR. It's public relations. It sounds a little bit better." I have a super chat here from I'm Not Your Buddy guy for $5. Says governments only confiscate weapons because what they say, what they are planning to do make you want to use them. See any historical authoritarian figure. Now, I mean, yeah, that is true. So like in historical reference, the authoritarians always wanted to confiscate the guns before any of this, any of the bad stuff they did, because an unarmed populace is an obedient populace, I suppose. I mean, people have reasons for wanting to own guns, and it's funny because you hear this. I heard recently on Joe Rogan, he was talking with Tom Green, who is a Canadian, but he's been removed from Canada for so many years, and Tom Green's sentiment, he still kind of had this like Canadian sentiment of like, you know, wow, we shouldn't own guns for self-defense. You know, that's not a legitimate reason to own a firearm. But that in America, that's the culture. That's the first and foremost thing. Yeah, you can hunt with them, and that's great, but firearms are for self-defense, and personal defense is very important. We have a completely different culture here, and to think that somebody would want to defend themselves with a firearm is like ghastly to so many out there. What do you think?
I mean, that's a big topic, but I've spent my whole life, you know, feeling like the U.S. It would be great if the U.S. could lose their guns. I mean, it would be great, and you know, really, what it comes down to is it would be great if the U.S. could figure out how to be less violent. That's the issue. That's the real issue. It's not the guns; it's using them to kill people.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I suppose lots of liberals would love to ban all the guns in the U.S. But and I've always agreed with that my entire life until just recently, just the past few years.
Oh, really?
With all the weird things that are happening in Canada, I start to find myself saying, I hope those Americans hold on to those guns because we might need some help.
Well,
honestly,
I need some help.
That's what you're alluding to, right? I mean,
well, no, what I'm alluding. Well, there's that, but I'm also saying that, you know, when it comes to guns and crime and all that stuff, if you were to ban all cars, yeah, the rate of car accidents would go down, but the rate of irresponsibility wouldn't. You know what I mean? it's kind of it's a misnomer.
From what I understand, they did a lot to ban guns in the UK, and then all of a sudden you just had people stabbing each other and throwing acid on people.
Yeah, that's
faces.
That's a new thing.
Weird. So it's like people are still getting. I don't think the murder rate went down. In fact, I've also heard an argument that getting shot actually isn't that big a deal nowadays. If you know there's paramedics to come and attend to you right away, you're actually better off than getting stabbed.
Morbid thoughts. Patch Duress for $6.99 says, despite self-defense not being a right in Canada, are Canadians even legally able to obtain a firearm, long barrel or handgun? So handguns now, there's no more. You're not allowed. That's the rule. Trudeau brought that in. So yeah, you can still get your possession acquisition license. You can buy rifles, things like that. But the AR-15 has been it's the most popular sporting rifle in America. It's banned in Canada. You can't get one. It's not allowed. And before that it was restricted, which means it was like heavily regulated and it was hard to get your hands on. But now even pistols, no, you can't. There's no more sales of pistols. So people who own them currently, it's still legal to own, but they can't even transfer it to their kids. That's a thing. Light Giver for $5 says, I heard paintballs really, really hurt. Maybe we should purchase paintball guns. LOL. I didn't know this was going to turn into like a gun. The gun show. I didn't know.
Yeah, I know. This is not what I had.
Yeah. Sometimes it kind of devolves to this. Goko Donnie for $2 says, fly fishing, hunting, my world 101. That's a thing. And we also have Pastor S for $13.99 says, the U.S. Constitution is the reason their culture is superior factually and culturally. We don't have freedom of speech or right to bear arms. Canada has been sadly compromised from day one. So I'm going to push back on that one. So we don't have what's called freedom of speech, but we do have freedom of expression, which was supposed to, in its inception, be more encompassing than free speech. Just the concept of free speech. It was supposed to cover all forms of expression: artistic, singing, dancing, any form of art or any type of expression. It was supposed to all be covered in that. But you know, it's a semantics thing. Maybe the Canadian founders or drafters wanted to just use different language because it sounds better. I don't know. It's there's always been this like competition between the U.S. and Canada. I'm a dual citizen. I don't see it. I like America. I think it's great.
The competition between the U.S. and Canada, I would say that the Canada is competing with the U.S.
Well, yeah, it's not the other
Not a
way
two-way
around. It's kind of like pat you on the head. Yeah, thanks a lot. Good job.
Yeah, it's like I feel like, to be honest, in Canada, we don't really have a strong identity, a strong national identity.
Which is sad. I wish we
Pretty
did.
much the only thing we can all agree on is that we're better somehow. We're slightly better. It's like we're the US, but slightly better. We have universal Medicare, which actually used to mean something. We have clean streets, and we have good government. It used to be the promise of Canada was good government.
So we've lost all of that, and they want to change Queen Streets. They want to change them.
We've lost
to,
all of it.
Yeah, something else. This is really
The
sad.
The U.S. unfortunately has its own problems.
They do have their own problems.
Feels like,
yeah. Wow, that's a whole other podcast.
Like if it lived up to its own constitution, it would be probably the greatest country in the history of the world.
Well, yeah, it was, and that's the whole "Make America Great Again" slogan. And of course, you know, immediately people said, "Oh, well, that's racist because when was America ever great for Black people?" Or, you know, these concepts.
What, you just want to go back to slavery? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's sophistry. Like, people know that that's not what's actually intended in that, but they want to use it to score political points. And this is what largely gets me kind of it makes me, like, not mad. It makes me sad that people want to do that. Like, it's more about winning these political points in a you know, a mashup of words on social media or whatever, rather than actually like getting to the root cause of problems. Let's just, like, I want to win today. I want to have my win right now. And it seems like people are more concerned with that than they are with anything else. They're so wrapped up in it. It drives
me crazy.
It really does.
Absolutely. Yeah, I find that all the time. People are complaining, and they love pointing fingers, and they love, you know, insulting other people, and they love solutions that really just are kind of band-aid solutions, in my opinion. And you try and get to the root cause. You try and make suggestions to, like, eliminate the actual root problem, and they're just not interested.
They're not interested. And this is getting back to the Coutts guys. So these four were put in prison, and well, in remand, not even in prisons, because like that would denote actually being tried and sentenced to a crime. They were put in remand, and they were locked away. And we have people on social media that praise this, and
for sure.
And as if and we're talking about people who consider themselves liberals, like with the word liberal in it. And it's completely illiberal, this concept of imprisonment without, you know, your day in court, without a speedy trial, without any of this stuff. They're happy with these accusations. You hear this often as well with when Tamara Leach was put back in remand because of a violation of her bail conditions. They went and hunted her down across the country to put her back in jail. And the sentiment of just like joy that you hear from these characters on social media is really it's troubling. It's troubling because it like, does nobody think that if the shoe was on the other foot, that you would at least be happy that your fellow countrymen would be up in arms with the fact that there was injustice served towards you. Like, I don't have to agree with what the Coutts Four did, for example. And it might even get into that. I don't know, because I don't know so many of the details about them, their lives, what they stood for. Perhaps it comes out that I don't even actually like what they have to say and what they stand for. But my opinion on this whole thing is that doesn't matter. They should be able to see their day in court. They should be able to have the right to a speedy trial. And if if bail is a thing that's offered in this country, they should be given the same equal opportunity to have bail until their trial comes along.
Yeah, I've found myself reminding people, trying to remind people many times. Like I actually say to people, I suggest you need to go back and read about the Enlightenment and refresh yourself on what a liberal democracy is meant to be, because the principle of being innocent until proven guilty is one of the main cornerstones of liberal democracy. And ironically, it seems like you're saying, like, it's actually liberals in this case that are rejoicing about these men being held for so long, and they say, well, they're exactly where they're meant to be, and
well, then give them a trial
and
then rejoice when they're convicted. You know what I mean? Like that's really, I want to shout this at the top of my lungs at these people, but then I end up just, being a part of this whole anger online. You know what I mean? I guess.
Can I read a quote?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is from a woman named Janice Fiamengo. She has a YouTube channel. Can't remember what it's called at the top of my head, but she's actually a professor at the University of Ottawa, of all places. But she says, I used to imagine that in a tyranny, people were united against their oppressors. But now I realize that tyranny turns people against one another, making some glad, even ecstatic, to witness the excessive punishment of those they have been taught to hate. And I think that's exactly what's going on in this case. People see the photos of the four men. They're rural Albertans. They might look a little tougher, a little grubbier, perhaps, than a lot of rural Canadians. They definitely don't look like liberals, that's for sure. And I think it just plays into people's fears, and it plays into their prejudices. And I think there's a lot of classism going on. I think there's a lot of hatred against working class people that's being fomented in the US and Canada these days. And also I kind of see it as a bit of a conflict between rural people and urban people.
Is this an extension of what's been happening in the US, do you think?
I think it's part of the culture war. Personally, that's the way I see it. Yeah. I feel like we're being divided. We're being divided into more extremes than ever. I mean, we've all seen it. I feel like the Trump era was like just absolutely insane. I feel like a lot of what's happening today is ramifications of that time, where everyone just got into one camp or the other.
Yeah.
And you could manipulate people just by telling them, hey, look, the other camp is doing this thing. And everyone would automatically say, well, we're just going to do the opposite then.
Yeah, you did see a lot of that. And it really astonishes me how it's like Trump is not that amazing of a figure. What amazes me is how much people hate him, but they hate him in an unrational way, like a completely irrational way. Like it's not, it's insane. And to see, like, I'm talking like people with reputations, like figures out there that have gone completely insane.
Who was it that said there was some like relatively, I think it was actually like a Hollywood celebrity that said, maybe it was one of those late night talk shows hosts, but somebody said, I don't care if Hunter Biden has sex slaves chained up in his basement as long as Trump isn't reelected.
Sam Harris. He's not even just a.
Was it? That was Sam Harris.
That was Sam Harris.
Oh man.
That was,
yeah,
and we're talking about
TDS.
yeah. So for people in the audience that don't know who Sam Harris is, he's an intellectual. He's a neurophysicist.
Really,
he's not a dummy.
Really intelligent guy.
Yeah, he's not a dummy.
Yeah, extremely intelligent guy, and it just went full blown TDS.
Lost his mind. TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. For those that are listening, don't know that, but it's crazy. It's crazy how like people went right over the deep edge, like in a real way.
I can't believe Sam Harris said that. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was Sam Harris. He was on the Trigonometry podcast, and they brought it up. They just said like, yeah, well, what about Hunter Biden? And he says, yeah, no, I don't care if he has dead children locked up in a cell in his basement.
And that's the era we live in.
Yeah,
it's like people just want their tribe to win. That's the problem we have with Trudeau. I mean, how many scandals is this guy going to survive? I mean, do we have to prove that he's basically allowed the Chinese to create the COVID-19 bioweapon and kill millions of people? I feel like that's the next scandal.
It is the next scandal.
Survive it somehow.
It was on my list of things to talk about tonight, right. And I didn't get around to it. But
if you can survive 3 blackface photos, I mean, what else is there? I mean, a mild pandemic at this point is no big deal, right? For his supporters, they're going to find a way to justify it.
I don't know. I don't know how
It'll be all the same people who told us that, we had to lock the world down because it was such a deadly virus are now going to say, well, it actually wasn't that bad.
Yeah. But I feel that like, because there's a lot of doom and gloomers, right? There's a lot of people that say that the world's going to end. This is the end of it. I mean, every generation has that. Every generation has their group of people that say that this is the. It almost sounds like a conceited, like self-important way of looking at the world. It's like, when the world ends, it's going to be in my generation. It's going to be my time that happens. A lot of these things have happened in the past and they've been pretty bad. I mean, obviously we went through 2 world wars. It was really awful. And like, there is pessimism. I think people are going, there's optimism. Like people are way too pessimistic. I find, especially online characters, they go right for that black pill. Like it's the end of the world. I think a lot of that is driven by the fact that you can generate clicks by predicting doom and gloom, and people realize this once they start seeing like how the social medias work. Oh, more people pay attention to me when I say that the sky's falling than when I don't, and I say everything's okay. And so it's
always been a thing, like the Bible has doomsayers. I think that's the expression for people who are predicting the end of the world. People were doing that 2,000 years ago and building, little cults around the end time prophecies. It's something that's just always existed.
Yeah, I remember several end time prophecies in my lifetime. I mean,
yeah,
like there was the Y2K. I think there was a few in the 90s.
The end of the Mayan calendar is another one.
That was another one, and like there's so many end time prophecies that have never taken place.
Heaven's Gate, I think, was another one.
Yeah, Heaven's Gate, with the Hale-Bopp comet. I mean, my parents lived through Jonestown. Like they weren't involved in it, but they were involved in some Christian ministry stuff right around that time, and they got weirded out by it and moved away. And it wasn't Jonestown, by the way, everybody, but it was another one like that, not like that, but a Christian ministry. But they moved away from it, and then the day that they got back to Canada, they read the Jonestown massacre in the newspaper. And like, holy cow! Like this is insane. Like what is all this stuff that's happening? So like, a lot of weird stuff has happened over different generations, and there's been like psycho moments in history. Like I think this, I believe, I can't remember the author of the book, but he wrote Mass Formation Psychosis, and it was this idea that the elements were all just right for COVID-19, and there was this mass formation.
Absolutely.
And people were whipped up into this thing. And, you know, certain people are susceptible to it and other people are not. And because of this, so many people went batshit crazy, for lack of a better term. And comparable events are like the Salem witch trials. When people, you know, you're talking like old time America, and all of a sudden everybody believes that like there's witches, and you know, you got to drown them to find out if they were witches or not. And it's like the trials were insane. If you read about what they did, it really is incredibly insane. But then what happens though is after a while, society goes back to normal, and then people just kind of pretend that it never happened. Is that the direction you think we're going, or do you think that there's something else?
Feel like we're going back to normal, but I'm not sure where we're headed. It feels to me like the what am I trying to say? The tribalism. I don't feel like we're anywhere near getting to the point of coming back together and letting our differences subside. I feel like people are just deeply embedded into this tribalism right now, and it's not going away anytime soon, unfortunately.
Well, and I find that even people, even within their own groups these days, if there is no conflict, they'll find conflict. They'll find ways to conflict with each other. Even in groups that are in violent agreement with each other for months and months and all of that. And then they end up getting into these beefs or conflicts. And it's crazy. I've seen it time after time, even within like the freedom movement, or so-called quote unquote freedom movement, where people they're all in it for the same thing. And then it becomes like a cult of personality thing. And then they break off into their own little tribes. Is there some weird thing in the moon's in the right position? It makes us all ornery. We just want to scrap with each other. What is it?
I don't know. I think it's human nature. You know, I don't know if you've seen that documentary with what's her face? Jane, the young woman in the 1960s says she was a biologist or some type of scientist. Goodall, thank you. The documentary that came out a couple of years ago, where they show her just incredible disillusionment when she initially went out to study the orangutans. Were they
chimpanzees?
Chimpanzees, thank you.
Yeah.
She was an idealist, and she thought, you know, I'm going to leave horrible human civilization and go hang out with these chimpanzees and get back to nature. Little did she realize how violent they actually are. One group splintered off from the main group and started doing its own thing. And eventually the main group saw that other little group as a threat, and they ended up killing them all. But they didn't just kill them. They raped them. They defiled their corpses. They just went absolutely insane. And she was hiding in her tent the whole time, just afraid for her life. So, and individually, the chimps were really kind and loving, and she developed really incredible bonds with them. But as a group, you know, most days they were great, but
well, I think she crossed the line.
When they weren't great, they weren't great.
Well, I think she crossed the line a bit as a scientist, and she kind of, rather than studying them, she fell in love with them. She became part of their troop and all of this other stuff. But yeah, she was hesitant to. Her excuse was that she thought that she perhaps brought human nature to the chimp troop, and that it was her doing that caused...
She justified their behavior because it was her that inspired it? Is
that was what she tried to justify it as. And I mean, obviously that was dismissed. Like most people looking at the study dismissed that and said no, and why would you hide this evidence because of your emotional attachment to these animals? So like some of her work was discredited because of it, like some of her hypotheses based on it. Unfortunately, I mean, that's unfortunate for her, but like the information that we actually got from it was groundbreaking, because we learned more about the behaviors of our cousins, genetically, essentially, that they also have similar tendencies to want to war with each other, and in brutal fashions as well. Like not just I mean, chimpanzees are strong. They're about half the size of a human, but twice as strong. It's incredible the strength that they can. And when they fight each other, they literally rip each other apart.
Right.
Which is insane. I know
so we're doing better than that as a civilization. I've just within my lifetime, I've seen things really deteriorate. We're not killing each other over, we're not, it's not a civil war. It feels like it might be headed that way, but unfortunately we just can't seem to get along. We can't relate to people who are from the other tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels like politics has become a tribalistic culture.
Yeah, you're right.
And people on both sides are getting different sources of news and information, and they're building different narratives. And so, I mean, there's just a million examples of things that are going on where the gender thing is a good example, where one side is just going off in this direction and the other side's like, this doesn't even make any sense whatsoever. And the two are completely incompatible. Both sides, when you look at the people who are the most passionate on both sides, they both say the exact same things to each other. They're like, you're a cult, you're evil, and you're like, you should be locked up. And they literally say the exact same things to each other. It's distressing.
I find myself, I'm kind of fascinated with the whole concept of it, because I don't tend to think that people are evil in general, but I think that people are capable of amazing evil things, and like stuff that you'll read about in the Gulag archipelago, like things that people will work themselves into being able to do. And I feel like we're in a time like that, because you'll talk, like I always try, I'm always trying to bridge the gap, because I want conflict resolution at the end of the day. Like I don't want to live in a warring society. I don't want to live in a place where we're constantly at odds with each other. It's stressful. It's not going to lead to a good retirement. It's not going to lead to a good life for my kids, all of that stuff. So I'm always leaning towards conflict resolution. And in that, I try to reach across the aisle. And I find that there are certain things that as soon as you say a particular word, it'll trigger people on the other side. I think the term for it is a shibboleth. It's a phrase or an idea that is associated with a group. So say, for example, if I start talking a shibboleth, it's I know it's a strange word, but
interesting. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, so it's an identifier. It's a marker for groups. So if you hear somebody speaking certain words or saying a certain term, a phrase or something like that, you'll immediately go, that guy's in my group, or he's not in my group.
Right.
Based on those things. So if you say stuff like conformity and capitalism and all these things, you'd immediately think, oh, this guy's a lefty. He's, I could basically break it down where he stands politically. If he says things like free market and, the typical conservative words.
Freedom.
Yeah, freedom, that kind of stuff. Liberty. That breaks them. Those are shibboleths that would break them into another category. And what people use that for is a mark identifier to know who's their enemy in today's society, just in basic conversation. So what I try to do when talking to people that I know are on the other side of the aisle is I'll try to refrain from using particular terms that would be shibboleths of what's seen as the right. Right? 'Cause I don't know if I'm even that far right. Like I think I'm very centrist. I'm libertarian. You know, I let everybody know my point of view. I'm socially liberal, pretty fiscally conservative. I'm kind of just right in the middle. I'm not one way or the other.
Right.
But compared to where it's going right now, it's going crazy on both ends. So where do you even stand compared to the person observing, right? It's almost like political relativism, or you know what I mean? It depends on it's relativity, right? So it depends on the observer on what the other outside is politically. But I'll find myself trying to avoid
even masks. Like during COVID, masks became a form of that signaling.
That's right. They were a
people know
shibboleth.
which tribe you belong to. Yeah, big time.
So either you wore a mask or you didn't, and you were either, you know, trying to, from their perspective, you're trying to save the world, and these people are evil, awful people that are trying to infect everybody. This is genuinely how people thought. Like this was I can't get in people's thoughts, but I can, like, this is what they're expressing out loud. So if that's what they're expressing out loud, I would just assume that that's what they're thinking. And then the other side, you know, you go right onto the other side. Anybody who wears a mask is a sheep, and they don't have control of their own thoughts, and they're awful people themselves,
and
right?
People on the right, or people within the freedom movement, will actually get triggered by somebody wearing a mask.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like, you know, I remember this.
Had it happen to me. I was at a freedom rally, in Nelson, and I was walking down the sidewalk with a mask on, like after the rally, because it was like peak COVID times. And I was with my girlfriend and her daughter, and we were all wearing masks because that's what people were doing at the time.
Right.
And a friend of mine, literally a friend of mine, saw me and just freaked out on me.
Really?
Just went absolutely apeshit in front of my girlfriend's daughter. It was a bit distressing for her. So when I heard of people in Ottawa, you know, I heard that people were getting yelled at Ottawa for wearing masks. I totally believed it, because my own friend did the same thing to me.
Right. It was happening everywhere.
So it goes both ways.
Yeah, it does go both ways, and it's weird. Like, and I cringe to think of it. Like, I know people, part of their employment was you go home for the day if you don't want to wear a mask. And it's like, okay, well, I got to do this thing. So they just do the thing so they can get their paycheck at the end of the week, right? A lot of people were put in that sort of predicament, and not everybody's a hero, right? Not everybody's a hero, and maybe that's not their hill to die on. So they went along with it. And I know that that's a large part of the problem, is people just going along with it. But where do you take a stand? Where is the right place to take a stand? And is it other people's is it their position to deem what hill you should die on? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, specifically to the masks, I mean, COVID, you can't stop COVID by wearing a mask, because it's an airborne virus.
Right.
Had it been a droplet virus, then masks might have actually helped, probably nominally, but they might have helped a little bit. So I guess my point is that in another scenario, masks actually might have made more sense.
In another scenario,
and
yeah.
There was a time before we understood what type of a virus we were dealing with, where I think it was prudent to wear a mask.
That reminds me of another thing that Sam Harris said in that same podcast. Maybe it was another podcast, but he said, "Oh, if things were different, if it was a virus that was more pathogenic, and if it was a virus, if it was a virus that targeted children, I think people would respond differently." It's like, well, yeah.
Well, yeah. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, buddy. Great.
Wow, thank you for taking us on that journey.
Yeah.
And if people had guns pointed at our heads, we might.
Yeah, of course.
Differently as well.
If all the things were the right way like if all the things lined up to match your response to it, then you would have been justified, but you were not. And that's where it comes down. It really comes down to that. But getting back to this, so the Coutts Four, because it's such an unusual story. That, you know, 4 guys were held in jail for 2 years, and now 2 of them were let go. Can you tell me about that? Like, why were they let go?
Yeah,
Under what
yeah.
circumstances?
Thanks for bringing us back there, because that's a really important point. Like I was saying earlier, the 4 of them were denied bail on the basis that releasing them would bring disrepute upon the justice system, because the crimes they were accused of were so severe. Just recently, 2 of them were allowed to plead out on drastically reduced charges. The most important charge was the conspiracy to commit murder. They were accused of plotting to kill RCMP. Those charges were taken right off the table, which for a lot of people, including myself, is an indication that those charges were bunk to begin with. I mean, either these guys wanted to kill cops, in which case they should be prosecuted, or they didn't want to kill cops, so they never should have been held for 2 years without bail. Can't have it both ways.
Now, if that's the case, why would 2 of them still be in?
So I suppose it depends on how you look at it. You might assume that there's stronger evidence against the other 2. From what I know from the people who support them, their friends and family, their close friends and family, I think it's more of a case that those 2 are just determined to fight. They're determined to fight for their innocence. They don't want to plead out. They want to prove that the government was wrong. And they're willing to fight. I don't know about Chris Cartwright, but Tony is facing a total of, I believe, 75 years potentially. So, yeah. So he's playing a dangerous game, but that's how confident he is, how confident he must be that he is innocent and he can prove it.
That's crazy. 75 years for something that, I mean, essentially was BS, or it sounds like it was BS. I mean, I can't know for sure because we don't have many of the details. Like, that's the problem.
There's a lot of details, and it's also hard because there's so much I want to say right now, and it's hard to remember what is, open source information and what is stuff that's come up in the hearings. But he has an extra charge that none of the other men had, and I don't know if I can really get into it, but let's just say that some additional evidence was found in his personal property, which I believe is like at least an hour away from where he was arrested at the protest. It's also worth mentioning that another one of the men, Jerry, him and his wife were on their way home to Olds, Alberta, which is quite a ways away, at least I think an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours away. So they'd actually gone all the way home, but on their way home, they recorded a Facebook Live. And Jerry, at some point, they were encouraging people to come to the border. They're actually saying, we've been at the border at this protest. Now we're on our way home because we have to go back to work. We have no intention of going back to the protest, but we're encouraging our friends to go hold the line. So please go down and take a stand. And they literally said, we're not talking about like violence or anything. We're just talking about being there and taking a stand. But at one point, Jerry used the expression, "This is war." And that apparently has been used as evidence against him.
Right.
So these guys went home, they went to bed, they got up, they both were on their way to work, and Jerry got picked up, and then his wife, Jacqueline, went to the police station, and she got arrested. And meanwhile, the RCMP went to their home and obtained their legally registered and stored firearms and collected them as evidence. So I don't know if any of those firearms are the part of the ones on the table.
Right.
But that's an example. There's a lot of examples of things in this case. The more you dig in, the more it's just like, what is going on? doesn't make sense. There's a lot that just doesn't make sense, and it just doesn't pass the smell test.
So from here, where do we stand? There's two of them that are still in. Two of them are done. I guess they're done. They've pled out to lesser crimes. What were the lesser crimes?
It was more to do with just like improper storage of a firearm. Like really, I think they both had slightly different crimes that they confessed to, if you will. And in both cases, the sentence was equivalent to the time they served in remand. So when you spend time in remand, because it is so much more terrible than jail, it's actually, we could get into that too as a whole other thing, but remand is actually worse than jail. So when you spend time in remand, it counts for 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
So they spent like almost 2 years in a remand. So they were sentenced to 3 years in jail. So in other words, time served. But even the 3 years in jail for the crimes that they pled guilty to, it's just a ridiculous sentence. So it's just another example of just none of it adds up at all. It's all just crazy.
No, and because they pled out, they're probably not able to sue for the time that they spent. Or
Exactly. So one of the men, Chris Lysak, he's free and clear. I guess it's not fair to say that when he's still drowning in debt. I think he has probably at least $100,000 in debt still. So hopefully fundraising will take care of that.
Well, in 2 years of not paying his mortgage or things like that, right? This is like, that's crazy.
Yeah, lost time with his kids and family and friends. Yeah. The other man, Jerry, from what I understand, his plea deal isn't quite as generous. So he's not necessarily free and clear. There's a possibility he might have to testify. So yeah, that might be problematic. I really hope that that's not forced on him, because he hasn't had an easy time.
Fair enough. And so for the other two, what's the outlook on that?
Well, that's hard to gauge. I mean, I'm not privy to enough of the evidence to be able to make a determination what I think the odds are of them being exonerated. They both seem pretty positive for men that are stuck in what I would refer to as little cages with other men who are withdrawing from drugs and who knows what else.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
but is there a court date set? Like, is this something that they might?
Yeah, their actual trial is in the summer, so there's still a bunch of hearings between now and then. I think there's like 2 weeks of hearings in the next month.
Okay.
And I believe the trial starts in May.
So they will have their day in court, and this is a thing.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm interested to find out.
So my theory is, from what I've heard, I believe that my theory is that they would have been offered plea deals by now, but I think that they've kind of let it be known all along that that's not something they're interested in. So,
wow, that's some devotion right there. So that's incredible.
Yeah, and I really think there's a lot in their favor that wasn't meant to be. Like, there's a lot of people supporting them that really have their backs,
mm-hmm.
and keeping them strong. And I just think the government probably overplayed their hand. They use them. This is just my theory, of course. I'm just theorizing.
Mm-hmm.
But in my theory, they were used to justify the Emergencies Act. And the idea was, we'll just accuse them of something terrible. Everyone will think they're evil. We'll hold them in remand centers for as long as it takes to break them, which, speaking for myself, probably would have been maybe 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And I would have fled to pretty much anything.
Right.
Seriously.
It's not easy.
Like, I'm not even joking. Like, I can't even imagine like a weekend in that situation.
Right.
So, yeah. So I believe they were meant to have been broken by now. That was the plan.
But they didn't break. That's crazy.
They didn't break. It's hard to, like, if you think about it, like, if you commit a crime, you get arrested, then you're released on bail, and you know that you're gonna get arrested again, and you're gonna have a trial. That's one scenario. If you're just at a protest and you get arrested and you never, like, that's it. Like, you're in a remand center, and then years go by. You never go home. You never step outside. You never, like, that's it. You're just, it's hard to fathom.
It's crazy. And I hope they, well, I mean, I hope they get a trial that's fair. So if they did commit crimes, you know, of course, you commit a crime, you pay the price for the crimes committed. But I hope they see a fair trial, and it doesn't end up as some kangaroo court scenario where they don't get good representation or something like that. I hope, I'm serious when I say this. I want to afford even my political enemies this like, throw that out. I think everybody deserves a fair trial, even the most heinous people in our society, because this is how we make society fair, is that everybody gets that. So I hope to break that sentiment that we're getting, the vitriol that we see or hear from people. I hope I break by taking the position first, you know, that anybody who you're even opposed to gets fair, equal treatment under the law. And that's what we should all hope for, and I believe that wholeheartedly. I'm gonna get to some of these super chats before we close the stream out. I want you to stick around, because there's still some more things I want to chat with you about, but I'm gonna get to some of these super chats. Where were we? There's a whole pile here. I just don't want to miss any of them. We've got too many to mention here. From a point of freedom, of course, from Patch Duress 279 super chat. From a point of freedom, of course. Patch Duress also for the 699 super chat says it's a semantics thing. Perhaps our founders wanted to be more polite. Another reason for why our culture and politics have been compromised. Talking about what we were talking about before, the U.S. Canada relations thing. I think U.S. largely, they like us, like, hey, little guys over there, you know. But I never understood the animosity towards the States. I like America. I think it's great. It's amazing. I think
it's the most creative and innovative country in the history of the world.
It's fantastic.
I'll just say that.
I mean, you can find dicks anywhere you go. I mean, that's just a matter of fact. But we have dicks here too, so let's just compare that way. I'm not your buddy guy with a $5 super chat. Too many Canadians look down their noses at U.S. failing to realize without their military, our country would be expanded living space for China. That's funny. I'm not your buddy guy also with a $2 super chat saying the process is the punishment. One more super chat for $5 says,
yes,
this type of rural versus urban conflict dates back to even the days of Julius Caesar in Rome. Heck, Marcus Aurelius.
The word pagan, the actual word pagan actually originally meant person from the countryside.
Is that right? I didn't know that. He says that Marcus Aurelius remarked on it in his meditations. I'd like to read into some of that. There's some crazy stuff that is like paralleling. I know a lot of people are talking about this. The fall of Rome is on everybody's mind, but there's a lot of parallels from what happened in their society, as well as Greek society, what went down with Socrates, for example. That really crazy. Voven with a $5 super chat. Clyde, the pessimism is driven by personally experiencing this stuff instead of talking about it from a distance. Your perspective changes quickly. Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair thing to say. I'm not your buddy guy with a $5 super chat says it's because they are Malthusian. They're okay with culling people. Many of these elites see humans as a virus that is killing the planet. Malthus obviously was a mathematician who had the theory that we're going to be overpopulated by, I believe, the 1960s. Never came to fruition. Another death cult. that we were talking about earlier, more predictions that don't happen, but they still believe it anyway. Nonsense. Patch Duress with a $13.99 super chat. Sorry, I don't agree with the "it's my tribe" argument. Anyone who watches Clyde and our other independent new media still have the sense to know one side is cuckoo over for Cocoa Puffs, i.e. leftism, the devil. But I do think that there's a lot of people that are...
The other side will say the same about this side.
Yeah,
so.
that's true. They will say that about us. So, and I think people, there is redemption there. Like, some people are so far gone, I don't know what you do with them. But then, you know, there's so much redemption to be had, and I really hope for a conflict resolution in our own society. Jess44 with a $6.99 super sticker with the happy little fox there. Dana Wick with a $10 super chat. The U.S., with all their gun violence, live in fear, just like a few years ago at the Stampede. Someone asked a Texas sheriff how he liked it, and he said he would have shot him. they in fear. Okay, yeah. Well, it's a totally different world over there, I suppose. Patchter S $6.99 super chat. I'll admit if I didn't live in Japan prior to COVID, I'd automatically think masked people are sheep, although they probably are they just voted for Trudeau. Now, that's interesting. I lived in Japan as well, and when I see people wearing masks, I don't think they're fearful of other people. I think that there's two reasons why people wear masks in Japan. One is hay fever season. The pollen it's crazy. There's so much pollen in Japan, so they'll wear the masks to keep the pollen out of their nose. And the other reason is if they get sick, they want to keep the droplets in their mask, and it's a politeness thing for everybody else to not be coughing, especially in mass transit, that kind of thing. I'm not your buddy guy with another $5 super chat. True evil exists when the media lies to you. What you do to what do you call that? Or when you force medical experimentation or lock up pastors for holding church. Yes, evil does exist. Evil does exist, and but it exists. It's these things that bring it out in good people. I think good people are capable of real evil things. They just have to be brought there. It really is that. Nux for Cup with a $5 super chat. The success in the USA are possible because of their freedoms. They have that we thought we also had until Trudeau showed us we don't. Yeah, that's true. The Constitution is a brilliant document, and it saved them from despotic, warlord-esque type presidents and members of Congress for many years, and hopefully it'll hold them back a little bit longer, and maybe they can elect somebody or a group of somebodies that will bring it back to and restore it to its original glory. But at this point in time, it's not very savory. Let's just say that it's not very savory. So that's the end of the super chats. Thanks so much for joining me tonight, Stevlin. It's
thank you, Clyde.
Amazing to have these conversations and talk more about things, a little bit more of the nitty gritty, different people's point of views about all these, not just the Coutts Four, but like your opinions on these other things. It's refreshing to hear, and thank you for having this conversation with me.
It's a very relaxed environment that you create, and you have a great vibe, and I really enjoyed our chat, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit more about the Coutts Four.
Yeah, where can people find you on social media, places like that?
I suppose Stevlin Ambrose on Twitter. That's my main thing. So
that's the mainstay. Okay, well, we'll plug that then. Stevlin Ambrose on Twitter. Get over there. Great stuff, great tweets, great stories. Out there, actually checking out the situations, not just talking about it from the sidelines, maybe like I do. But I admire it. I admire what you do, and this is why I have you on. And I love chatting with you. For everybody else,
thank you so much. mutual admiration.
Perfect. And for everybody else watching, thank you all for coming. Thank you for enjoying these conversations and hanging out. Love to do this stuff with you guys. We'll be back again Monday morning for the usual video that we put out. And well, everybody keep on trucking.